kick things off with Spain tonight. 26-man roster named by Luis Enrique. A couple of notable absences in there. Borja Iglesias, Gerard Moreno, Sergio Ramos, Sergio Canales. No David De Gea, but then there are some notable inclusions too. One of which is Ansu Fati, one of 7 Barcelona players that was called upon, as we now welcome in Mario Melchiot, Gemma Soler and Ian Darke. And let me start with you, Gemma, because there was some controversy on the last international break when Ansu Fati wasn't called up into the Spain squad. So has there been some surprise now that he has been for this World Cup squad?
Hola, Kay. Yeah, it might be a surprise for that because he wasn't in that last call. But let's remember that in summer, during the Nations League, he was on the squad list, even though he was not fit enough to play. Why did that happen? Because Luis Enrique wanted Ansu Fati with the dynamic of the national team in case his fitness, his physicality was good enough to go to the World Cup. Luis Enrique considers that this is happening, even though he confessed that he hesitated until the very last minute. But he had some medical tests earlier this week in Barcelona that proved that he is okay to play. It's true that he hasn't been enjoying that many minutes starts with Barcelona, that he might be doubtful, but at the end of the day, he's a different player, he's a talent, and he's a player, he's a prospect, he's a player of the future for Spain. So Luis Enrique considers that it's good enough to take the risk to take Ansu Fati and maybe not another player that could be enjoying more minutes or more goals like Borja Iglesias. We're talking about the Spanish national team that is exciting, young, promising, and it's the main leader of this national team is Luis Enrique. He's like an author made by himself, so he considers that, and that's why he decided at the very last minute to take Ansu Fati.
Like Gemma's saying, he's not reached his peak this season, Craig, but a risk worth taking for Luis Enrique?
He's not reached his peak because his manager, even when he has come in and performed well off the bench or whatever, has tended to leave him out more often than not. So you're not going to. And I think for every player with a World Cup coming up, if you're not getting the game time you need, if you're not showcasing your talents like we see there, and we know he is a talented young man, then it is a concern. You start worrying about, well, that's if you care about it. I'm sure most players do. You start worrying about your place in the squad. You start worrying about going to that World Cup. So that's been allayed for him now. But I'm sure he had a nervous few weeks because his manager, for some reason, even when Rafinha in particular, but Rafinha and Dembele were struggling, others were coming in before him. So, but I think it's the right decision to take him because I think he's a supremely talented player.
It's a massive moment for him, Ian. Are you happy to see him in the squad?
Very happy indeed, because I think Spain need his kind of X-factor. They're going to pass some teams to death out there. They're going to be high pressing, but he can go past players. He can make the unexpected happen, and I think that's what they're going to be lacking. I like them a lot. It's a lovely balance they've got in this squad, a lot of gifted footballers, and I would have fancied them to win the World Cup, to be honest with you, but I think they're kind of on a collision course with Brazil if it all works out. Although, of course, trying to work out how the World Cup might actually evolve is different. But I think, yeah, Ansu Fati, he's had all that kind of injury problems, but I'm glad to see him at the World Cup because he's an exciting youngster.
One player that we won't be seeing is Sergio Ramos. He wasn't called up during the Euros, Mario, but there had been some speculation that he could be coming in. He'd been playing well at PSG. He'd let it be known that he'd be interested, well, more than interested, obviously, to be involved in a World Cup. Are you surprised not to see him there?
Yeah, I mean, look, the experience, I think they looked at the overall package, and I think the team is already stacked with that. So that's why I think the coach made that decision. Look, regardless of that, as an individual, you always want to go to the World Cup. That's no, I mean, I didn't expect him to say any different. Like all the players that are, attending the competition are there because they know that could be their last, and he wanted to be that for himself too. But I mean, Busquets is now, one of the key figures in the middle of the park for them. And I think with what the coach now really wants, and I think if I look at all the teams now, what they're really crucial now is that the coach makes sure that the time that they're going to stick together, that they make sure that everybody is there as one objective. It doesn't mean Ramos wouldn't have that, but only one thing you have sometimes is that sometimes the individual can have more effect on the coach, and I think sometimes coaches don't always look for that.
Gemma, obviously for some parts it's not so much of a surprise to not see Sergio Ramos there, but what's been the reaction to him not being included?
Well, we kind of expected it because he hasn't been in the last squads. And Luis Enrique, as I was mentioning, he has a lot of personality. He's the leader of that national team. And when he took the charge, he decided to do a lot of changes. And taking out some of the veterans was one of the decisions, so he decided to stick with that, even though that was easier last season, but not this season, because Sergio Ramos wasn't playing, he was injured, and this year he's always in the stars of PSG. He has played more minutes than any other center defender that he has picked, like Eric Garcia, Laporte, Íñigo, or Pau Torres. So, yeah, it's kind of shocking. A lot of people in Spain are not happy with this decision, but I think it's Luis Enrique. He always stick to his decisions. He's a big personality, and he decided to go with that, even though Sergio Ramos was in the pre-list, in the previous list of Luis Enrique, but he's staying with his idea. He's got results. He has reached the finals of the semi-finals of the Euro. He's in the Final Four of the Nations League, final of the Nations League, the previous edition. So he will stay with that new, fresh, promising national team.
He's won the Euros twice, he's won the World Cup, he's got a lot of experience as Sergio Ramos. It would have been the last dance. Do you think he could have brought something special to this locker room?
This is the angle that a lot of people take, and it's not about his last dance, it's about the national team, it's about the squad, it's about what the manager wants. And as Gemma was saying, clearly that these decisions have been made a long time ago to freshen things up. It's interesting, you know, some of these defenders, and I think that's where their Achilles heel is, along with the holding midfield position in front of that, because if it's Sergio Busquets that plays, then I think he struggled for long periods this season. And whilst he can pass the ball for fun, you can get around him. You know, Carvajal's not been playing regular, Azpilicueta's not been playing regular, Eric Garcia, we've talked about him in the show.
He's made the cut.
A lot. He's made the cut. He's not filling me full of confidence, but the manager likes him. There are one or two others in there. And then you look at the midfield, some real talent in that Spain midfield, but there are also players who are not playing well. One or two players, at least, maybe two or three in that midfield bracket that are not playing well. And it just seems to me, for some countries now and some managers, this is the way they go. And I think England, and we'll get to that, are a little bit like it as well in terms of their manager. I don't know if it's just because the game is changing or the management or the way they look at it's changing or the squad list has got bigger. But it used to be players were kind of, for the most part, selected on form. Mm-hmm. But it seems now players are selected because a manager, A, can trust them, has worked with them, knows they're not a problem within the dressing room, which can be a problem if you're going somewhere for over a month. And two, they fit into a system that a manager wants to play in. And gone are the days where just because you're banging in goals, or just because if you're, David De Gea and you were the #1 goalkeeper in Russia, and since that time you've resurrected your career and you're in sparkling form, now you're not even in the squad. Right. I think that kind of tells a story of how some of these coaches now are looking at the balance of how they put their roster together. Yeah,
and especially Luis Enrique, he doesn't mind about the form, he cares if you fit his system. What about you, Ian? Do you agree with Craig in that it's right for him to do this, not to put Sergio Ramos there if that's not what suits him?
Well, I think you bring back Sergio Ramos as the leader of the gang if you're staging some kind of comeback concert. I don't think Luis Enrique is of that mind. He's got a very clear idea, isn't he, of the way Spain are going to go about it. They're going to play bravely at this World Cup. They're not going to die wondering. They got to the semi-finals of the Euros and only got beaten on penalties. Thought they were the better team in that semi-final against Italy as well. So they're talented. I mean, he's got Eric Garcia, okay, whose form's a bit in and out. He's got Laporte. He's got Pau Torres, who's a nice footballing defender. So, I think he's happier to go with the younger guys at this point. If Sergio Ramos was, say, 32, not 36, it might be a different argument.
Mario, you've got them going all the way to the final, I hear. What do you like about them?
Yeah, no, just like you guys already talked about. Look, if you look at a country, like a nation that's supporting, if you look at the Group E, I always like on my list, I had Germany and Spain going through. And then you also got to look at what they're going to meet afterwards, and I think that's just one of the crucial things. Like if they face, okay, maybe against France, maybe you can have your question about it. But I think if they inform, and you also need a little bit of luck when you come into this tournament. I feel if they, sidestep France, they play that final. If they play that final, that is maybe my pick also, because Brazil is the nation that I think that will win the World Cup. But that is just my pick because, one, because I like the way they play. But if you look their national team, it's almost, I think it's a bad performance if Brazil doesn't win it. That's what I feel, because of the quality they have in that team.
Well, thank you very much for watching ESPN on YouTube. For more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app. And for live streaming, premium content, and let's not forget as well, ESPN FC 7 days a week. Subscribe to ESPN+.